Many of us grew up watching the Ten Commandments on TV, and we saw the movie based on the book of Exodus. We saw Moses growing up in Pharaoh's household. We saw him learning the science and the arts. He learned how to fight in the military. He was familiar with everything Egyptian. But then he began to learn his true identity, that he was a Hebrew. And in the second chapter, he witnesses a helpless slave who's being brutally beaten by an Egyptian. And so what does Moses do? He intervenes. He kills the Egyptian. He hides his body in the sand. The next day, Moses rebukes a Hebrew slave who is mistreating a fellow Hebrew. But the man turns the table on Moses, asking, "Do you plan to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" Realizing that his deed had become known, Moses flees to Midian. You see, the Egyptians had the death penalty for anyone who committed murder. And so he flees from Egypt and he goes to Midian. And there on the backside of the desert, he intervenes yet again. There is a Midianite girl at the well, and she is being deprived of getting water for her flocks. And so Moses drives away some unfriendly shepherds, and he allowed the woman to water her flocks. Moses is going to later marry this young woman. Her name was Zipporah. And they're going to have two children, Gershom and Eliezer. We learned this from Exodus chapter 18, verse 4, and Exodus 2 and 22. The mission of Moses is going to be given to him while he's on the backside of the desert. 40 years he's been on that backside. 40 years he's been in that desert. 40 years he's been out there in the land of Midian. He witnesses a bush that is being burned but is not consumed. And this is intriguing. This leads him to draw closer to the burning bush. And while examining the burning bush, God speaks. God speaks to Moses from the burning bush. And the Lord said to Moses, "I see Israel's misery. Egypt's persecution of Israel is intensifying. And I have heard their cries. I remember the covenant that I made with Abraham." God speaks from the bush, and he tells Moses, "You're standing on holy ground. Take off your shoes." The Lord says he has heard the Israelites' cries and will deliver them. The Lord tells Moses that he has been chosen to deliver his people. So Moses has some misgivings. He's going to make some objections to what the Lord wants to do in and through his life. As a matter of fact, he's going to come up with 4 reasons why God shouldn't choose him. In the 3rd chapter, verses 11 through 12, Moses says that he's not important enough to appear before Pharaoh. But the Lord tells Moses that he will be with him and will bring him back to Mount Sinai. Moses' second objection is found in Exodus chapter 3, verses 13 through 15. Moses complains that he holds no authority. The Lord tells Moses that he, the I Am, is his authority. Moses has a third objection, found in chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. Moses insists that the people will not believe him. The Lord turns Moses' staff into a snake and tells him that the people will believe him when they see this. The fourth objection that Moses has is found in verses 10 through 17 of chapter 4. Moses complains that he is not a good speaker. The Lord tells Moses that Aaron, his brother, will be his spokesman. We find some prophecies in Exodus chapter 3, verses 16 through 22. We're told Israel will be brought out of Egypt and into Canaan. Chapter 3 of Exodus, verses 16 through 17. Pharaoh will oppose Moses. Exodus chapter 3, verse 19. Egypt will suffer God's judgment. Exodus chapter 3, verse 20. And Israel will receive riches from Egypt. Exodus chapter 3, verses 21 through 22. The Lord tells Moses that I'm going to give you some signs. First of all, I'm going to turn your rod into a snake. When God turns Moses' staff into a snake, he tells Moses to pick it up by the tail. Now, when you watch any program, you know that you have to grab the snake by the head, by the back of the head. But the Lord tells Moses, grab the snake by the tail, and when he does, it turns back into a rod. Not only did he give him this power to turn his rod into a snake, but he told Moses, extend your hand, and his hand became leprous. He says, now put it inside your garment. And when he pulled it back out, it was just as it was before. And then the Lord says, on top of the rod being turned into a snake and your hand being leprous and then made clean again, I'm going to do something to the Nile River. I'm going to turn it to blood. And then you're going to know that I am the Lord. I am the one who has sent you to deliver my people from their bondage. God allows Moses' older brother Aaron to accompany Moses as the spokesperson. Moses receives permission from his father-in-law to leave. Moses says goodbye to his father-in-law, and God will help him perform the miracles, the signs before Pharaoh. But Pharaoh's heart is going to become harder. Now, Moses did make some mistakes in his life. Of course, being a part of the covenant community, he had to circumcise his son. But Moses, for some reason, out of neglect or a refusal to do so, did not circumcise his firstborn son, Gershom. The anger of the Lord burned against him, and the Lord was seeking to kill Moses. But Zipporah stepped up to the plate and she circumcised Gershom, relieving God of his anger and taking Moses out of danger. the directions have to be followed. God is concerned about obedience. And sometimes women have to step up and do what the brothers should have done. Well, in the 4th chapter, verse 27 through 31, he tells him the details of their mission, and then he meets with the elders of Israel. Upon hearing Aaron's message and seeing Moses' miracles, the elders believed and they worshiped God. Just as the Lord said they would believe. When he showed them the signs, they believed. And so Moses then is going to be the one whom God uses to liberate his people out of Egyptian bondage. When Moses meets with Pharaoh in the 5th chapter, Pharaoh had a whole lot to say. As a matter of fact, he insults the God of Israel in verses 1 through 3. But Moses said to Pharaoh, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, let my people go." Pharaoh said to Moses, "I don't know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Pharaoh increases the burden of Israel. In the 5th chapter, verse 4 through 14, he forces them to gather their own straw to make bricks. The people, upon learning the reasons for their additional burdens, began to become angry with Moses and Aaron. Moses, in turn, complains to God. Moses is reassured that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Lord himself, will deliver them from Egypt and lead them into the promised land. Exodus 6:14 through 30 records the family of Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, the ancestor of Moses and Aaron. Aaron is appointed by God to serve as a prophet and spokesman for Moses, chapter 7 of the book of Exodus, verses 1 and 2. God will soon pour out his divine wrath upon the land of Egypt, we're told. He's going to display his power, chapter 7, verse 3 through 7. And then we see Moses and Aaron confront Pharaoh again. Pharaoh demands that they demonstrate the power of their God. So Aaron throws down his staff, which turns into a snake. Pharaoh's magicians do the same, but Aaron's snake swallows up their snakes, showing that Aaron and Moses has an all-powerful God, a God that's more powerful than the gods of Egypt. And then there's an outpouring of plagues affected. Chapter 9, verses 8 through 12. After Moses tosses soot from a furnace into the air, festering boils break out on people and animals. We see something like this happening in the book of Revelation when the plagues are poured out. Then we're told of the 7th plague, which is hail and lightning. Exodus 9, verses 13 through 35. And the Lord sends a strong east wind that blows in the worst locust plague in Egyptian history. Pharaoh repents, the Lord removes the locusts, and then Pharaoh changes his mind yet again. The 9th plague is that of darkness. Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 through 29. The Lord sends a deep, terrifying darkness over all of Egypt for 3 days. Pharaoh agrees to let the people go, but the flocks must stay. Moses refuses. The 10th plague is given, the death of the firstborn sons. Exodus 11, verse 1, and then verses 4 through 10. The Lord tells Moses that this plague will result in Israel's freedom. Israel makes preparation. They observe the Passover. Each family is instructed to slay a lamb on the 14th of the first month of the Hebrew calendar in the spring. Its blood must be sprinkled on the door frame of the house. The Lord warns the people that he will kill all the firstborn sons and firstborn male animals in the land of Egypt, but he reassures them that he will see the blood and will pass over the Israelites, sparing the firstborn of the home from death. The Passover. Each person began to make preparation. They panicked following the death of the firstborn on the 14th of the month. There was a panic that broke out. Exodus chapter 12, verses 29 through 33. And following the death of his firstborn, Pharaoh summons Moses and commands him to lead Israel out of Egypt.